Breakout Session 1 is about to begin. Stuart J. Murphy is an award-winning children's author of the Math Start series and the I See, I Learn series. Stuart will share ideas and strategies for supporting the social emotional learning of children. He will discuss how social and emotional skills in the early years lead to student success, particularly in mathematics. Join Stuart for Social Emotional Skills equals Successful Math Learners in Breakout Session Room 1.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that great introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. This is the second time I've participated in this incredible California Early Math Symposium, virtual symposium, and gosh, we're off to a great start. I know we've got a huge national and international audience, and so for the international part of the crowd, I want to say that I'm presenting to you from Italy. So I'm joining the international group with you right now. My name is Stuart J. Murphy, as you know from the introduction, and my series are Math Start, which is a series of 63 books published by HarperCollins. 21 of those books are created especially for the pre-K and K math learners, and the level 1 books in that series. I See, I Learn is my social and emotional health and safety and cognitive skills series. It's a series of 16 books published by Charlesbridge Publishing Company. And then I'm a part of Savvas Learning, which was Pearson Education, part of the team of Envision Mathematics, which many of you have heard of or use in your schools. And then the brand new program called 3 Cheers for Pre-K, a comprehensive pre-K educational program. So those are some of the things I've done. And I do want to take care of just a couple of housekeeping things up front, because I always forget them at the end. And so one of those things is that I would like to make a point of the fact that my session is going to include door prizes, virtual door prizes. So some of you are going to win a free book. And I'm very excited about that and can't wait to hear who the winners are. I want you to make sure that you join the virtual bookstore when that time comes during your day, because my books are going to be available for sale both in English and in Spanish. And so I have many Spanish titles that will be available to you, as well as the English versions of my books. And then, as a special thing, I want you to visit the virtual swag, a new part of the symposium. And we have created a special activity book just for you, just for this symposium. So I want to mention those things, and I think you know the protocol for questions, but you put them in the chat box, and I'll try and leave room to answer some of the questions at the end of my session. So I wanted to mention some of the things that are most important to me in my work, because they'll come up throughout what I'm talking about today and what I'm presenting with you today. The visual learning is my background, how children learn from visual stimuli like charts and graphs and icons and illustrations and artwork. And of course, visual learning is so important to the study of mathematics. It's how kids see the math. They see what's going on. And then I always like to talk about math as a life skill, because let's face it, it is treated sometimes as just a school skill, and it is not a school skill. It is a life skill. In fact, one of the most important life skills that children will learn during their school education. I like to get our kids communicating about math, talking about math and writing about math and singing about math and listening about math and making sure that they make math part of their communication process. Today I'm going to be focusing in on social emotional skills and the relationship, the important relationship of social and emotional skills to the learning of math. Because, we have to make sure our kids develop positive attitudes toward mathematics. We have to make sure that our students feel good about math, know that math is important, realize that math can be fun, and they can become creative about mathematics. So I'm going to be hitting all of these themes today during the course of my talk. But the real focus of this session is going to be on making sure that our students develop foundational, and I emphasize the word foundational because these skills are foundational to their education. They're foundational social and emotional skills that help them to be successful learners, and at the same time provide meaningful, helpful mathematical learning experiences for all our kids. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and I will be interweaving those other themes that are part of my ongoing interests and work and research. And so I hope out of this out of this session, I will give you a clear message as to the importance of learning social and emotional skills as a necessary part of a foundation for making sure that your students become successful math learners. We want our children to be fully engaged in acquiring new skills, not just listening to you, but fully engaged and active in doing so and understanding some bases for these skills so that they can move on to new skills. We want our kids to be persistent, get their work done, be excited about their work and excited about completing it, and of course motivated to advance their knowledge. Happy to learn, happy to be a part of learning. And I've got a series of books that I mentioned up front called I See, I Learn. This is one of my books in the I See, I Learn series. It's called Percy Gets Upset. Now, I'm not going to read this book to you because it would take a while and we don't have a lot of time. And also because I think it's important that we get onto some of the other parts of my talk. But I am going to kind of go through the visuals of the book and paraphrase the book for you because I think it will help you get an understanding for my interest in social and emotional skills. Percy is very upset. He gets very upset and gets very frustrated. And in this case, he's really frustrated because he can't find his shoe. There he is. He's missing one shoe. I can't find it. I can't find it. Well, his mom says, calm down. Here it is, right under your chair. The next day, Percy is playing with his buddy Frida, and he's playing hide and seek, but it's time for dinner. It's time to go home. But Percy gets upset again. He's grouchy. He's scowled. He doesn't want to go home. He wants to keep on playing. I want to play. I won't go. I won't go. Percy, try and stop and think, says his mommy. You can play with Frida again tomorrow. Oh, it happens again at dinner time. When they get home, dinner is ready and Percy is cranky. He doesn't want to eat. I don't want to. I'm not hungry. Well, Daddy says, take a deep breath. Try at least a few bites. Good food is good for you. And finally, after he ate his meal, he went to bed and he didn't want to go to sleep. He was angry. He was annoyed. I want to stay up. I'm not tired. Well, finally, his mom said, do you want to talk about it? I just want to stay up, he muttered. It's late, said his daddy, and tucked him in. He counted to 10, and before he was finished counting to 10, Percy's eyes were closed, and he went to sleep. Well, the following morning he woke up, and of course his parents didn't know what to expect, and he woke up and he was happy. What happened? Tell us, his parents asked. Percy smiled. I'm not upset anymore. I just want to have fun. Well, at the back of this book is a kind of visual summary of all the things that you can do to stop being upset and all the things that make you feel upset, how you feel when you are upset. You can feel frustrated, grouchy, cranky, and angry. But some of the things you can do is calm down, stop and think, take a deep breath, talk about it, count to 10. So that's my little story about dealing with frustration. And there are questions at the end, higher level questions that you just can't answer yes to. What do you do when you're upset? What helps you feel better when you're frustrated? Draw a picture of how you feel when you're grumpy. Draw a picture of how you like to feel. Camille's Team is another book. It's about cooperation. And cooperation is summarized with a visual summary at the end of the book, as was shown in Percy Gets Upset. Make a plan. You work together. You share the fun. And you cooperate. Again, with Good Job AJ, children learn how to build their confidence. What you can do, try again. What you and others can do, work together. And what others can do for you, cheer you on. Now, you might say that, what does this have to do with mathematics? This is a math conference, an early math conference. But I do want to point out that teachers must be aware that self-regulation is the number one precursor of literacy acquisition. Literacy acquisition. And the same is true for mathematics. Now, I cite the book Teaching and Learning in Preschool here by the authors Venn and Jan. It's published by the International Literary Association. It was published in 2004, and I will have a couple of quotes during this presentation from that book. It's a book that many of you already have in your library as educators, and if you don't have it in your library as early childhood educators, I highly recommend it to you. Self-regulation is a life skill that transverses all the developmental domains. It promotes social relationships, self-control, a positive work ethic, and systematic problem-solving abilities. And research verifies that self-control and other social and emotional skills not only are learned from directly watching parents, teachers, and their peers, but by observing characters in books and other media. So using books to help model social and emotional skills, those skills that we want our children to have so that they can be successful math learners. Social and emotional development refers to the skills necessary to foster secure attachment with adults, being able to get along with adults, parents, caregivers, teachers, maintain healthy relationships, get along with others generally in their life, regulate one's behavior and emotions, be able to control what they're doing, and develop a healthy concept of personal identity. This is a quote from the Head Start development, the Head Start Child Development and Early Learning Framework. Now, this is one of the books from my Math Start series. And so I want to kind of show the mathematics aspect of social emotional skills and how they come up within a story. They come up within stories generally, and how they're really important, and also give you a chance to see one of my books that is about a turtle, and the turtle who loves seaweed soup. I mean, turtle loves to make seaweed soup, and he loves it so much that he made a great big pot of it. And the great big pot of it was stinky and slimy and disgusting. There he is stirring away. He just loves to make seaweed soup. And stirring and stirring. He just can't wait to have lunch. So he put 4 things on the table: a bright red cup for gooseberry juice, a great big spoon, a napkin, and one of his nicest bowls. There they are. He's all set to sit down and eat his seaweed soup. But then what happened was that Crab came along, and he invited Crab to join him. And he got 4 other things to eat with. He got another bowl, another napkin, another spoon. He didn't have a nice bright red cup, so he got a glass for his gooseberry juice. But then he looked up into the sky, and just then what was happening was that seagull and sandpiper were flying by. Well, they smelled the seaweed soup. It was disgusting and awful and terrible. And they tried to fly away, but he called them down. He said, "Hey, come on and join us for seaweed soup." And so they couldn't say no to their friend. And so they came down and they joined them for seaweed soup. And Turtle went and got 4 more things to eat with. He got yet another bowl, and then a cracked bowl, and another cracked bowl for himself, a plastic yellow cup and a jelly jar to drink with, 2 more napkins, and 1 big spoon and 1 small spoon. So each of the animals had 4 things to eat with, and there are 4 animals. And we could count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or we could count them, but count by 4s. We could go 4, 8, 12, 16. 16 things in all to eat with. Each animal has an even set. Well, Clam finally joined them. Clam tried to get away too, but Clam finally joined them. And poor Turtle didn't know what to do. He had to go, and he had to find another set of 4 things to eat with himself. Well, he couldn't find anything, and while he was gone, the other 4 animals decided to try the seaweed soup. And they ate it and ate it, even though it was stinky and slimy and disgusting, until it was all gone. Well, Turtle came back, and he was all excited because he did find 4 of the things to eat with. He found a shell that you could drink out of. He found a pail that he could use as a bowl. Found a shovel to use as a spoon, and for a napkin, he was going to use a beach towel. Now let's eat that soup. Well, he was shocked to find out the entire seaweed soup had been eaten by his friends. But then he got up and he turned around, and they thought, "Oh, now he's really mad at us. What can we do?" And they walked over and got another whole pot of seaweed soup. And he said, "You can never make too much seaweed soup." Well, they slurped and they ate until that entire pot of seaweed soup was gone too. And as in the other books I showed you, I do a visual review at the end of this book, the end of this story. Each of the animals had 4 things to eat with. There were 5 animals. We sometimes with children, we count them, making the emphasis on the 4, the 8, the 12, the 16, and the 20. Or so we count from 1, or we count from 1 in Spanish, or we count by 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20. You get the same answer. This is a very early book, so I don't introduce the word multiplication in this case, but it is certainly a developmental book. The notion of even sets is part of the developmental process toward learning about multiplication and learning it visually, seeing the math. So again, I want to now go back to the social emotional parts of both that book and the earlier books that I read and try and make this big relationship between social emotional skills and the learning of mathematics. Because I think that's so important. I think it's important that we do that. And I think it's important that we make sure that our children have those foundational skills so that they can be successful. And we want our children talking about math. Remember, I talked about communications before. We want our children talking about math, presenting their ideas about math, talking to their parents and caregivers, talking to the rest of the class about mathematics. We want our children sketching about math to show how they would visualize math. And we want them writing about math. We want them to express their ideas, demonstrate their understandings, and explore their creativity. All about math. Creativity and math together. I do some of my presentations around the notion of creativity and math going together and how important that is because it gets kids excited. And of course, they are creative. And teachers come up with the most creative ideas for having kids really do projects about mathematics and do interesting papers. I'll show you just a few that I have available to me right now. This was a teacher that was teaching the basic shapes and teaching their attributes, the three corners and 3 sides of a triangle and the 4 equal sides and 4 equal corners of a square, etc. And so then she had, as part of the process, the students build little cities. Build little visual cities, so therefore being creative with the shapes and being creative about them and using them well and doing some of this work at home with their parents so their parents and caregivers could get involved in their learning and talking about the shapes and then writing a paper about what they did. So there you are, communicating about math, writing about math, being creative about math, and also learning about math and learning the important skills associated with it, in this case, the attributes of 2-dimensional shapes. And here's another example with a sailboat pulled up on a dock in front of a house and sunshine and a nice big paper that the student wrote all about shapes and stories coming together to talk about mathematics. And of course, there's a step further, doing those basic 2-dimensional shapes and their 3-dimensional counterparts, the rectangular prism, the cube, a cone, and building cities about that too, and building 3D cities. So taking it on to a whole new dimension with 3-dimensional cities. And you can see kids are very creative about it. What they're doing, there's even a swimming pool in this one over on the side, so it's quite and there's an office, and so the kids were really getting excited about this project. And by the way, this project was done with kids working together, and so therefore I can go back to some of the statements I've made already about the importance of social and emotional skills and kids being able to work together. Being confident in themselves and what they can contribute, but also being able to get along with other kids and being able to bring their own talents to play and recognize those talents of other people and be respectful of other people's contributions. And so I think you can already begin to see how these 2 areas of learning, social emotional skills and mathematics, come together to be important partners. Maps are also great projects for kids to do either on their own or working in a team of 2 or 3 or whatever. I love these because the teacher had them. These were done in a kindergarten class in Louisiana. And I love the fact that there's a key to what each of the things are, what each of the items are, the tables and the chairs and the windows, etc. And of course, building a map is a great way to learn about dimension and scale. So very important math skill. But also a very important creative skill of being able to visualize a map and think of a map as a representation of a whole space. So for our children to be successful in mathematics, teachers must infuse a can-do and can't wait to do attitude into their everyday math practices. So, there's a lot of math phobia out there, as we know. There are a lot of kids who they wouldn't select math as their favorite topic. We can turn that around. I think kids need to feel, hey, I can do that. I already know how to count, so I can count. I can count all the way up to 100. Maybe I can learn how to count by 5. Gee, maybe I can learn to multiply. Maybe I can learn the attributes of those shapes. Maybe I can know that something is twice as far or half as far away from where I am. Maybe I know how much change I have and what the total is because I know some of the facts and I can add them up. And then to be excited about it, to have projects and activities and stories and things that can happen within your classroom that take math out of just being a school skill and turn it into the life skill that is so important and that it is. So what I want to do is make sure that I included in this session some classroom strategies, some things that you can do right away. And I know that many of you do these already. So please excuse me if I'm repeating stuff, because sometimes when I present my strategies, I get back notes with even better ones, because I know you are all serious educators by the very fact that you're attending this symposium today, and I know you do many great things with your students. And so I'd like to put these up as something to remind you of some things you may have done already, or perhaps for you to think about and do for the first time. And so I think displaying materials that help to explain mathematical ideas is a great thing to do. Make sure there are things, if you're teaching remotely, make sure there are things that you can show on your site while you're speaking about what you're talking about so kids can see what you're talking. Maybe there are materials from real life somehow. Maybe there are little sets of three of these and 3 of these and 3 of these, so children can see the even sets and be able to count them and then be able to count by 3s and then be able to understand them, or things like the shapes that I showed you already. Have students search for real life examples and report on their findings. And so kids can do that in parks. They can do that with their parents, or if you're not teaching remotely, if you're teaching in a classroom situation, you can certainly have them bring in examples. They can bring in examples of triangles, photos of triangles, or a little drawing of a triangle, or things they've cut out of magazines of triangles, or newspapers of triangles, or things that way. I mean, they're working with their parents again to be able to extend their learning, and yet you're showing them real life examples of those shapes and forms. I work with students to create stories that include mathematical ideas. I always tell children that my stories have 3 things in them. They have words, because you communicate, of course, with words, and that's how you communicate your ideas and write your stories. They have pictures, because pictures are a part of storytelling as well, and that a lot of ideas are expressed visually rather than verbally, and math. So words, pictures, and math are in all my stories, and math is a part of how we communicate too. You can't say much without math. You can't talk about how much money you have, what time it is, how near something is, how tall you are, without mathematics. And as you try and, if you were to try and little experiments have been done with this, if you were to try and speak for a while without saying anything that had any mathematical consequence to it, you'd really have trouble doing so. So I think showing our students that math is a part of everyday life is an important part of our work. Encourage students to sketch as part of their math note-taking process. And so sketching out their idea of what that thing is. How did they subtract that? Did they circle it? Did they have a certain number of dots, and that they had 10 dots and they took 4 away? They can easily circle 4 as if they're going to put an X through them and see what's left. and showing their knowledge of subtraction that way. The same obviously can be done with addition. You can show timelines of how much time has gone by. We spent 5 minutes doing this, and then we spent 20 minutes doing that, and then we spent 5 minutes doing this, and suddenly you have a vision of a timeline and elapsed time. And those sketches can become really valuable tools in being able to not only see what your students know and seeing what seeing what their level of knowledge is, checking their understandings, but they're also valuable tools in getting kids to think about bigger ideas and how to move further with their math knowledge. I think it's important to group students to work together to create models of new math concepts. And I think it's a great way to take advantage of the different areas of skills, the different learning levels that children are at, so that they can contribute to each other and learn from one another. And then, of course, that goes back to the books I was talking about in my I See, I Learn series about how children will then learn the social and emotional skills they need to be able to work together and to be able to create together and take the most advantage of that experience. Maintain a math literature library. As an author of math books, I know that sounds a little self-serving, but I don't mean just my books. There are many, many good resources out there for children and teachers about mathematics. And so I think it's very important for your classroom to have a math literature library. I try and convince librarians when I'm talking to librarian groups about having a week every other month that only math books are on display in the library. Wouldn't that be something? And just by walking into the library, you know the importance of math and story coming together to create math experiences for our children. And then create visual models to help bring math to life. And I've talked about this already. That's part of my work as someone who works in the field of visual learning. And I think this is just so important. I showed you a few of them, and you can see more when you go to my website. It's a really important thing to be able to do, is to create visual models that show children what the math is doing, how the math is happening. Show, as I say, see the math, getting our kids to really see the math. So those are some of the strategies that I hope that you will all consider and employ in your classroom practices. And so this is my Math Start series, and I read one book from that, which was Seaweed Soup. And as I say, the 21 pre-KK books are my level 1 books, and those would be the most suited to this audience that I'm speaking with. And many of the books come in Spanish too. There are Spanish translations available now of 5 of the books, and they were created in time for last year's symposium. So they have a very definite symposium relationship. And those are available in our bookstore, a virtual bookstore, our booth that's there at the symposium. And here's my I See, I Learn series. And of course, I referenced a number of books from that series and took you through, almost read Percy Gets Upset. And so I hope you'll take a look at those books and those skills as well. And those books and some of those books are also in Spanish. And so right now, what I'd like to do is just to kind of do a visual reminder before we go into some questions and some other ideas before my session ends. But as a visual reminder, like I give at the end of my books for the visual kind of summary of the story, a visual summary of this presentation is that if you take mathematics and positive attitudes toward math, the I can do and I can't wait to do idea about mathematics, and you put that together with engagement, getting really involved in math and really wanting to do it and excited about it and positive about it and fully motivated to learn more, to advance your learning in mathematics. If you can get your students to that position, then you're going to have success with your students, success in math learning, success in school, and setting the framework for success in life. And so that's my session today, and I want to thank you for listening to it. Again, I want to say how how proud and excited I am about this opportunity to speak with you today. And having done so, I would like to see if there are questions that I should be answering and taking. And so if you could let me know if there are any, and I would appreciate it. I'm very excited to learn new ideas. I'm getting some really nice comments about this and about bilingual books being really great, and about having books available in Spanish, and about some really nice concepts. And somebody said that my seaweed soup reminded them of when she makes lentil soup. I hope it's not quite so stinky and slimy. Laura said that she loves the can't wait to do idea. So I think that that's all great. And then there are a couple of important questions. And somebody else really likes seaweed soup. How nice. And a couple of people have indicated that it was nice to meet me. Well, it's nice to meet you too. And I want to talk about the two questions that have come up. One of them is about the relationship of books and math, because the whole idea is, of course, do you teach math contextually in the context of a story, therefore a book about math, and or do you teach the mathematics as a math skill that doesn't necessarily put it within a context, and how do those balance out? Well, in fact, you teach both ways, of course. I mean, the answer is that that's not a battle between contextual learning and non-contextual learning. Both are extremely important. I think it's really important for kids to see how numbers work together, to understand numbers, to develop their fluency in working with numbers, and develop their skills in mathematical skills that aren't related to numbers, like things like shapes and geometry and estimation skills and ideas and that's related to numbers. But different avenues that take you that build your math learning. That said, so I really appreciate this question. That said, I think it's really important that you teach contextually too. I mean, we used to have kids say, or this is in the past, it probably isn't in the past anymore at all, but we used to have kids say things like, well, when am I ever going to use that? And what good is that going to do me? And I think that if you teach math contextually, where it's in the context of a story going on about a roller coaster ride, or making seaweed soup, or how many sets of people fit in each car in this amusement park situation, or things that you buy in a mall, or numbers of people going in and out of a party, or a field day, and all kinds of things, building a chart or a graph to demonstrate that data. And by putting those things together, it demonstrates that the power of story and math coming together, that it's part of real life. So I don't think it's a debate. I don't think of it as a debate. I think of it as all inclusive. And so I think that this is really, really important. I had a question or a comment from South Africa, so I'm very glad to see this. And the person writing it indicated that that a lot of kids don't come to school with the confidence that they can do math, and there's a tendency to see it as a burden, and especially when they move on and the intermediate stage. And I think that can be, but in a way, that's what my talk is about. So thank you for bringing that up, because it kind of validates the importance of this idea that we need to get our kids in a situation where they're really excited about mathematics, and turn it into a positive. Help their parents do that when they're talking at home about math. Help parents do that by giving them ideas, or their caregivers, or whoever, about giving their ideas about, hey, talk about math as back being fun. Here's an interesting project to do with your kids, like building those three-dimensional shapes I showed you, or coming up with a timeline of their day. What fun that would be. Each person's day is different, and so they can compare timelines of the last hour, and then they can go that up to a full day's timeline and see how they spend their days. And Laura points out that visuals are helpful for adult learning too, and I think, yeah, she's right. She's right on target. There's absolutely no question about that. And so I really appreciate some of these comments. Let me see if there's another question I can answer. The importance of, again, the importance of bilingual books, and if you go onto my website, you'll see that there are lots of links there to other things you can do, and ideas, activities that you can do in your classroom. And so you can see my website listed right here, www.stuartjmurphy.com. And and one other question that's come up that I think that's important. I kind of addressed it, but I'd like to see that it's come up as another question. I'd like to talk about it just a little further, and that's group activities, small group activities in math, and how that has all the earmarks that we've already talked about of kids cooperating and working together and gaining confidence from one another and building their skills together. But it also, they make something, they end up making something, they end up creating something. And I was in one school. Now this was a little older, and this is an early math conference. They went from first grade, I think, maybe K, up to fourth grade in creating this project in the school that I was visiting in Texas. And what they did was they basically created an entire amusement park. I mentioned the word amusement park. An entire amusement park out of things like the centers of toilet paper rolls and the centers of paper towel rolls and the boxes and of anything they could find. And they had a whole section of the gymnasium that they were able to use for a period of time to be able to build that. And then they kind of sold tickets to the kids in school, so they would have for this, you could go to this place and this place and this place. So they were learning about number, and they were learning about the games that they were creating. And it took that project, took a whole classroom to build. And little teams of 3 or 4 were working on each of the sections of it, and it became a great big deal. And I know a teacher in Florida who used to do things like leave a footprint in her room. The kids would come back from playing in the playground, and they'd come into the room, and there'd be this big footprint, and they'd leave a note and saying that this person's footprint is 1/5 of the length of it is 1/5 height of the creature that was in here, and give a few other mathematical facts like that, and come back into the room after they thought about it for a while, and there would be some questions about how tall do you think the creature is, what do you think the creature is, and there'd be other mathematical questions about that. And so that would be a fun way to engage kids and get them working together and talking together about mathematics. And then it goes back to the whole notion of kids developing mutual respect and a feeling of confidence in their ability to work together. Now I'm supposed to go back to the question box and see. I like these comments, and I can't wait to explore my books further, which is really nice. I'd love to hear that. And can you list the book's name? I didn't get it. And so the 2 books I read were Percy Gets Upset from the ICI Learn series and Seaweed Soup from the Math Start series. And but you all, as attendees, have these talks available to you afterwards if you need to go back and look at any of these. And there is, somebody points out the entertainment part of it, and I think that that's really true. Is the fact that if you're entertaining the kids, you are engaging them, and I think that's really great. And let's see, scrolling through to see if I've missed something that is significant. And someone's asking about receiving more resources, and don't forget, I mentioned right up front that in the swag section of this conference, the new swag section, there's an activity book that was created just for you. And so you need to check that out. Somebody asked about where they can find my books, and again, they're going to be for sale in the section called the virtual booths that are there, and also on my website. And ways to get kids motivated. And yes, that's what it's all about. And then we'll talk about families, how to get families engaged. So I see that question too. So I probably just have time for that. Getting families engaged in mathematics education, because I agree that it's kind of hard to do sometimes, because first of all, parents are very busy. Secondly, we've got this situation that, depending on where you are, some virtual and some virtual learning situations and some live learning situations in the classroom. And the virtual ones, getting the parents engaged somehow, what you're doing and helping to extend math learning into everyday life is even more important in those cases than when you've got the full classroom live available to you. Or I don't know, everything. It's important all the time. I can't even say even more important. And so, how do you get the class? How do you get the parents engaged? And I know that some teachers do things like they kind of lightly preview with parents what they're going to be teaching next, and so that if you're going to be moving on into subtraction or skip counting or adding on. Adding on is that important skill where kids, they know that they have 4 of something and they're going to add 3 more, and so they can start by counting. 1, 2, 3, 4 that they had already, 5, 6, 7, and so they've got 7. Or they might learn to add on, which is they don't need to recount the 4. They know they've got the 4, and they go 4, 5, 6, 7, and eventually that will lead to building simple equations like 4 plus 3 equals 7. And I think you can easily make some visual models for parents to practice some of that or work with some of that, and then give them the idea that, hey, maybe they should come up with an idea on how to show that the child can bring back into the virtual or the non-virtual classroom experience and share with other kids. And so getting the parents so that they know where you're trying to go with this, so that they're not left out of the picture. Because I've seen parents get very frustrated about trying to deal with teaching math in any way themselves, or dealing with children in mathematics themselves, and it can be frustrating. And like they said, they're not trained to do that. But I think you can train them to do some things that get them engaged, the parents too, and that they can do easily, even though they're very busy, and even though they're not math teachers, and even though math might sound scary to them, and the very notion of teaching math may be way, way out of what they want to be doing. I think you can come up with some things, and again, assign books or suggest books or recommend books to them to read, like the books I shared with you today, that have some of these ideas in them, so they can go to the library and get those books, or buy them if they are able to, or borrow them from your math library if that's something that you do in your school experience. But anyway, getting them engaged in math learning, giving the parents a chance to be a part of it is a great way to make sure that whatever you're doing in school doesn't just stop there, that it spreads and becomes a part of all your students' everyday life. And now I'm just looking back at the top to see, and I got someone who said they agree. They understand what I'm talking about, not only understand it, they do it. And that is great to see. And let's see, there's some that have just been added. Very excited about new resources. Okay, well, I think I'm practically at the end of my time, and my clock says I've got 1 minute left, so I don't want to leave this without saying a very big thank you, like is on the screen right now. I want to thank you for being a part of this breakout session. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and I want to congratulate you on being a part of this very, very great symposium. You've got a wonderful day ahead of you, and I bet you can't wait that you've developed not only want to get through the session today, but you just can't wait to learn everything you're going to learn. So great to meet you. Have a wonderful day, and thank you all very much.